Chapter 10. Olaf laughed with glee. He had a new idea that he thought was sure to work. Was your prediction right? Had you guessed Olaf was the laughter that the girls had heard? In a storage room inside the castle walls, he had found racks and crates of old clothes, dresses and suits and uniforms. According to what he had learned, ghosts usually wandered around draped in sheets. They were sure to be less shy if they had fancy clothes instead. So Olaf had unpacked some outfits and laid them out to show them off. Nothing happened. The clothes just sat there, all nicely arranged. The snowman sighed. He was trying everything he could think of. He had even locked a door after he passed through it to make sure that the spirits didn't drift past him. He didn't want to miss meeting his future friends, but still, nothing. Olaf said to himself. Maybe the ghosts prefer the sheets after all. Ooh, maybe I had it backwards. Maybe I should dress up as a ghost. With that, he grabbed a large, moth-eaten sheet and covered himself with it, peering out through the holes that the very considerate moths had made. Then the snowman waddled out of the storage room and up a long flight of wooden stairs. Chapter 11. Do you think Olaf's going to find a spirit? Do you think he's going to find one? A phantom or a ghost? Well, let's read on and see. Chapter 11. Anna ran through the narrow and gloomy hallways, her sister trailing behind. The passages were haphazardly arranged, some clearly having been leftover space between walls, and others having been purposefully constructed. So haphazardly means just kind of all over the place, random, just like if you had thrown a bunch of blocks in the air and they just landed, that's haphazardly versus being very well arranged and specific. So that's what they're talking about. They turned and widened and narrowed again, unpredictably. We're using that word predict about being able to predict what something happens using a guess, but if it's unpredictable, that means it's really hard. You can't guess what's going to happen next. Anna, wait, Elsa shouted. You don't know where you're going. Anna kept running, jumping over the occasional crate and ducking the random low beam, yelling back as best she could. I heard someone. That means we're not alone, which means maybe they know the... Oof! Oh no, Anna, are you okay? As Anna rounded a corner, she had run face first into a large pile of crates and crumpled to the ground. Anna sat up, looking a bit woozy. I'm good. I'm okay. Just gonna sit a second. In the dim light, Anna looked up at the crates. They were filled with mildewed, old uniforms. Mildew is that kind of gross stuff that grows in places where it's wet and it kind of stinks. Like if you go into an old, dank basement, you might smell mildew. Clearly, they had been tucked away by the castle staff years earlier and completely forgotten. They were stacked almost to the ceiling of the passageway, and in this small section, that meant really, really high. Wow, that's a lot of boxes. Elsa, it's a dead end. Where are we supposed to go now? Elsa paused, peering at the ground next to Anna. Look, more of those little footprints. Anna leaned over and examined the prints. They were faint, but visible. So when they said the word faint, we use that in different ways. But faint in this sentence means that they were very, very light and hard to see. But visible. You could still see them, but they were very faint. They were very hard to see. What could have made them? Elsa looked around. I don't know. We should keep moving. Fair enough, Anna agreed. How will we get past these boxes? It will take hours to move them all. Elsa didn't respond. Instead, she just waved her hand, and a staircase of ice appeared, leading up the tower of crates. Or you could just make an ice staircase, Anna said as she stood up. That would be a good plan B. And with that, Anna carefully headed up the slippery stairs, her sister right behind her. Chapter 12. Okay, this is creepy, Anna whispered. Anna wasn't wrong, Elsa thought as she surveyed the old dining room. The sisters had descended the ice staircase and followed more of the strange footprints along a twisty hallway to find that the only way forward was through a crawl space. Look at that word descended. They had descended. So descended means to come down. Ascended means to go up. So when you ascend the staircase, you go up the staircase, and when you come down the staircase, you descend it. So you can do this really fun thing. The next time you come down the stairs, you can tell someone that you are descending or you're going to descend the staircase. And that might kind of knock people off their feet to use big words like that. By the time they had emerged on the other side, both girls were covered in dust. From there, they had found another secret door, which at first they thought was the way out. Instead, the door led to an abandoned section of the castle, closed off for dozens of years by the look of it, and the old dining room they were in. It was small by Arendelle's current standards, and the dusty drapes covering everything gave it a sinister look. The word sinister means evil, scary. Paintings of kings that ruled centuries earlier adorned the walls, and only the slightest cracks in the bricked-over windows allowed any light in. Anna dug through some dirty-looking boxes and found a lantern that still had some oil in it, but the flickering light of the lantern only made the room look spookier, especially since it allowed the sisters to better see the fully set table, complete with wax food and glasses filled with a sour-looking liquid, a pickling brine of some kind. So that means something that you put into preservative. Usually it's got vinegar. So if you've ever eaten pickles, the juice that's around them is a pickling brine. And the pickles are actually cucumbers. And when they first go in, and then they become pickles after sitting in that juice or that brine for a while. Someone was just here, Elsa noted, pointing out the slight drops of moisture on the table settings and the freshly polished wax fruit. Someone just set this table up. But who and why? Anna shook her head. Maybe the right question is what would do this rather than who. You said you heard that ghosts live in the castle walls. Oh, those were just stories, Elsa countered. Old spooky stories that people tell to children. Yeah, Anna said as she sniffed the sour liquid in the wine glass. Except that someone or something poured this vinegar in these glasses and put this wax fruit on the table. Something else is here, inside the castle walls, but obviously hiding from us. Why? It was Elsa's turn to shake her head. I don't know, but it can't be a phantom. Ghosts aren't real. I know. It's just, Anna said, considering the possibilities. Whatever did move all this around, it had to go somewhere. Anna held the lantern up, lighting the door at the other end of the room. Both sisters saw more of the strange footprints leading out the door. Anna pointed. That's the other way out. Great, Elsa said as she moved to the open doorway. Then let's go prove there are no phantoms and get out of these old rooms. Let's move on to chapter 13. Anna shivered. Things were just getting creepier. With only the light of the lantern to guide them, Anna and Elsa had made their way out of the old dining room. Unfortunately, the sisters couldn't find any direct access from the sealed section of the castle back into the main section or to the outside world. On the upside, Anna noticed the flame of the lamp flickering in a specific direction, which indicated air moving through the walls. This led the sisters to another partially open secret door, which led to a different secret passageway. Other than being dustier, it was no different from the first one. Super high ceilings, exposed beams, narrow windows letting in small amounts of light. The sisters moved as quickly as they could, but Anna was getting increasingly concerned about the time. The ball was scheduled to start soon, and if she missed this, if Elsa missed this, but there was only so much rushing they could do. Sometimes the space was so narrow they had to scoot through it sideways while holding their breath. Other times the ceiling was so low they practically had to crawl. One stretch of crawl space was rotting, and Elsa had to create a narrow ice bridge for the sisters to get safely across. Another section was blocked by a locked door, which fortunately Anna was able to open with a bent hairpin. The sisters felt like they had been walking for miles, and given how much the passages twisted and turned and doubled back on themselves, they probably had. And then suddenly, they found themselves in an old storage room. Along the walls, there were racks and boxes of clothes, mostly old dresses out of fashion for more than a generation, and mostly covered in a thick layer of dust. Mostly. Those clothes. Elsa's voice was quiet. They've been arranged like... Anna finished the thought. Like they were being worn by people, and the people just vanished? It was true. In the center of the crowded space, a group of ornate outfits lay puddled as if people had been dancing inside them. Near the bottom, shoes could be seen. Unlike the clothes still hanging or folded away, these were relatively dust-free, as if they had been moved very recently. So look back up here at this word right here that I'm saying, ornate, a group of ornate outfits. Ornate means very fancy, and they have lots of things on them, maybe a lot of sparkles and jewels. It's very, very fancy. But they must have been like this for years, Elsa answered. For whatever reason, they were stored this way. Or, Anna poked at a dress, feeling the cloth. Her hand recoiled instantly. It's cold, almost as cold as ice. So look at that word, recoiled. So she went and touched it, and she recoiled. She drew her hand back very quickly. Elsa grabbed the dress. It's like it was sitting out during a winter night. How could it be so cold? Anna gestured wildly. Have you not been listening to anything we've been talking about for the last few hours? Ghosts! Okay, so we're going to stop there this time. And I want you to think about, what is it that's making all this happen? Do you know what this is? Is it ghosts? Is that what Anna and Elsa are seeing or finding along the way? Is it ghosts that are doing all these things? And if you think so, put that in your brain. And if you think not, why?